Order. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. My name is Stephen Blockmans. I'm a research director here at CEPS. It's my privilege and pleasure to welcome you all to CEPS. Also, of course, people following online. We can't see you from the room, but you will be able to see us. Also for future purpose on YouTube. Well, for an event which marks the launch of the European Political Community Observatory with a panel discussion today. Observatory, an online tool which has been developed with the generous support and inputs also by the Open Society Foundation's Europe and Central Asia program, here represented by Anton Artemiev and Mariana Berbeck-Rostas. I can't see you. There you are. Thanks for joining. And also in consultations in Chisinau a few weeks ago, online, with many stakeholders, officials, of course, academics and fellow researchers in the think tank world, experts. In the last 2 months, when we have been conceiving, designing, and ultimately building the observatory, as I said earlier this morning, literally in no time, what you see here running in the background are screenshots from the website, and you will see one of the slides also, the link to it, where you could just click also on your phones. We'll get a perfect presentation of the website, which has been built essentially since the second summit of the European Political Community took place at Chateau Mimi in Moldova, within reach of a war zone in Ukraine and, of course, the contested zone of Transnistria. The website that we have been building, and which you see gradually unfolding in front of your eyes, lifts the veil on some of the content of the discussions which take place at EPC level, but where, as external observers, members of the general public, we're sometimes left piecing together the puzzle of the general decisions and thrust of the meetings as they have taken place. These summits do not come with a final communiqué. We are overwhelmed on our screens with all kinds of press statements by our dear leaders. Of course, photo ops of bilaterals, the working group sessions that are being organized during that day. What the observatory tries to do is to pull all of this information together in a one-stop shop website, where not only you will find references, of course, structured according to the topics, according to the summits. We had the initial one, of course, in Prague last year, Prague Castle, not just to document the content of what we've observed taking place so far in a rather factual sense, but also to provide analysis as to the trends that we gradually see emerge from the meetings. And so, both in numerical terms, you can see from some of the slides that the numbers of initiatives in certain areas seem to, eclipse some others. And that already gives us a little bit of an indication after 2 summits where the center of gravity of the discussions tilts towards, and of course this may change still over time. The website is now live. You can go to epc-observatory.info to consult it. I will not venture into a full presentation of the website and all of its functionalities. I'll leave it to your own curiosity as a visitor to explore. Since this has been built in such a short time frame, there may still be glitches left and right that we have to correct if you see any, if you have any other ideas, we would most welcome, of course, your feedback to them. I think this would be also the opportunity to thank especially Tran Nguyen Ngoc of Fruit du Dragon, as a web developer based in Paris, who's done a marvelous job in following all of our guidelines and demands, requests, and implement them, I think, in a visually very attractive and clear manner. I would also like to thank, of course, my colleague Dylan Macchiarini-Crosson and our research trainee, Natalia Macalina. Where are you, Natalia? Registration. Thanks will be, of course, transferred later for their invaluable work, the many hours that you put into the research, the content management also of the website, as well as its design. So what I do want to, at this stage, point out is the what, why, who, and how of the EPC Observatory. As to the what, well, I briefly mentioned it. It's an online tool which we hope will support both policymakers, of course, the Sherpas organizing the EPC meetings, and the transfer from one rotating presidency to another. Policymakers around Europe who try and follow what actually has been decided. Even for them, it may have been very difficult, to get the entire picture at a day, which there's a lot of frenzy, of course, with press statements and pre-orchestrated bilaterals or minilateral meetings. But the observatory is also there to support a wider audience. I think in assessing the initiatives which have been taken at EPC level by our dear leaders. And so as a civil society driven tool, the idea is that it will be, for the moment at least, co-managed by CEPS and a think tank or civil society organization based in the state that will host the upcoming presidency of the EPC. So we'll be working with the Spanish think tank, hopefully in the second half of this year, gearing up for the Granada summit, the third summit of the EPC, and then with the UK think tank later on, and so on. Why have we built this? Well, because with OSF, we firmly believe that ultimately the legitimacy of the European political community as a rather informal platform will depend on its ability to demonstrate its value added, not just by way of photo ops, which are then up for consumption in the Kremlin, but also, of course, for delivering on the initiatives, perhaps even the commitments made at summit level. And so a level of public scrutiny, of course, research interest comes in this as well. It would go too far to say that this is a tool for political accountability. Given the informal nature of the statements, those expectations should probably be played down indeed. But we think it's especially important in an area where there are no official documents being produced by our leaders. And still their words matter, of course. Who? Well, I mentioned briefly the role that CEPS plays and also OSF, but I'll be remiss not to point also to our Moldovan partner, represented here by Julian Grosa. It's a director of the Institute for European Policies and Reforms, or IPRE, which is based in Chisinau and which helped CEPS with the organization of a public event to communicate more widely and in an independent manner discuss the value of the EPC, but then also at expert level to help design this website. As for the how, methodologically, of course, as academics, we try to built this website in a scientifically defensible manner. But given the fuzzy nature, the fluid development of the EPC as a whole, we've had to make some executive choices which may not always be properly academically supported, which opens a discussion for, or as a matter for discussion, but of course will mature over time as the dust of some of the initiatives that have been taken settles and where patterns emerge about the attendance of our leaders to these meetings, the level at which they are represented as states or members. The EU is there as well, by the way. But of course also the topics on which they engage and the level of concrete detail as to the implementation of the commitments made. So in that sense, we base ourselves on extensive and ongoing desk research, combined with interlocutions with diplomats. We have a few of them today present in the room, and we'll hear from them as well. With the idea, of course, to then filter the information in a visitor-friendly manner, and on our homepage you will see some of those filters that allow you not just to hover your cursor over a geographical map to see with little cards popping up per country which initiatives that particular country or the EU as a member, a participant to the EPC have participated in, within clickable links to further information about the official documents, the press statements made, or the analysis that has been already conducted on it. And perhaps this repository could grow further into a tool of communication for civil society organizations to, to press here and there their dear leaders to introduce topics for discussion in what is otherwise an unscripted speed dating platform for leaders. And so both as an academic tool, analytical tool, I think it might also serve both local and international media in obtaining quick and fast evidence-based analysis and facts about the EPC. Okay, with that, I would like to turn to the panel discussion, which will not revolve that much about, as I said, the website itself, but about the EPC, the European Political Community, which, of course, had a very rapid genesis of its own, since Emmanuel Macron here in Brussels, I believe it was, or was it in Strasbourg, on the 9th of May, Europe Day, Saint-Schumann, last year in front of the European Parliament, came up with the idea of a European political community as a response to Russia's aggression against Ukraine, of course, as a platform to show solidarity with Ukraine, but also in defense of whatever European security order still existed. But the fuzzy mandate and the rapid development of it, of course, have also meant that it's been, a bit of an intangible creature to get a hold of. And to help us understand what the EPC is about, where it came from, where it currently is, what the takeaways are from the two summits, in particular, of course, the most recent one, and where this venture will go, we have invited a number of speakers. And I would like to start with Ambassador Daniela Morari, who's graciously, at the very last moment, stepping in for Ekaterina Kasinje. I'm not sure if I pronounced that correctly, the chef de cabinet of Maia Sandu, the president of Moldova, to offer her impressions as to the organization, the delivery, and the outcomes of the summit held in Moldova on the 1st of June. So, Ambassador Morari, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon to everyone. Thank you very much for inviting me and for organizing the event. Incredible but true. That like in Moldova, I think everyone is counting time before Jesus Christ and after Jesus Christ. In Moldova, we've been calculating before EPC and after EPC in terms of effort and dedication. And I think it's so important to have this kind of meeting also after the long marathon, especially from our side, and also there have been different meetings before the meeting in itself in Chisinau, to have this discussion after the meeting, also a little bit to go through what it meant, how it perceived, and thank you for putting it here. Usually the famous quote goes that you can connect the dots looking backward, never looking forward, but I understand through the observatory and the tool, you are trying also to look on the present and to keep going with the future, what the EPC could look like. And it's very kind of interesting to be part of this too. Republic of Moldova very much resonated with the idea of the EPC when it was announced, and also through the form and way how it took place as the first meeting in Prague. And especially being a small country, and being in the neighbor of Ukraine, and the neighbor with the a country which is in the war, we thought that if the discussions to be taken for the continent, to be as close as possible, all the leaders, like to offer this platform for all the leaders of the continent to be in the context and in the understanding of our context, realities, and neighborhood. And we wanted, kind of from there came also the idea and initiative to host the next EPC gathering in the Republic of Moldova. And we are very honored that kind of we had the possibility to host it and to offer this platform for all the leaders of the continent. And also it was a very important element for the Republic of Moldova, especially in the time in the last weeks and months that we've been going through. It was very important to have the support, and also that Moldova is not alone, that Moldova has all the support and all the background and backup of all the leaders of the continent. And we are very grateful for all the help and support that was provided for the Republic of Moldova and the guidance in this process. And now, indeed, after the event took place, we can look what exactly it meant for us from kind of different lenses and different perspectives. For us, it meant history, and it's indeed a very historical momentum. We've been discussing informally yesterday. It was like the main important event we've been hosting as a country. Our Olympic, our Formula One, our World Cup in different ways and forms that you can put it. It indeed made a huge effort, and a very important effort inside the country, but also in cooperation with all the partners, to put everyone together as an element to unify and to have all of us together, and to make the country proud. And for the Republic of Moldova, it really means and meant a lot. We learned a lot from this process. We learned a lot in all the aspects and all the services working together. And inside the country, cooperation between different parts of different institutions, different agencies, different ministries, but also with all the work with the partners, with the countries, with all the guests kind of coming to the Republic of Moldova. Also, it was a very important element of having Moldova being known and putting Moldova on the map. And knowing Republic of Moldova through what it is, not only the usual stereotypes that we've been usually known through. And also it's an important element showing that when we have a clear goal and a clear objective, we can deliver and we can provide and also to be united, and this means a lot for a small country as we are. And we have already good examples into this path also for our EU accession path, also doing different steps of the stages, answering to the questionnaire in very quick deadlines, in delivering in different kind of very challenging crisis elements that we've been struggling in the last year, the refugee crisis, energy crisis. It's also kind of a very empowering moment when we have a clear kind of objective we can deliver and we can unify, even we are small and we have a small teams and administration. And also it proved, and from the feedback I'm receiving after the meeting, that everything looked very professional and we can deliver and we can stand up to the standards and to the expectations. This is also a very important element for us inside the country. As I was saying, like the EPC, it's the platform where the leaders can discuss and agree and find solutions for the challenges for the continent. And this is what exactly we wanted to provide and to offer that platform and our contribution to this discussion. But at the same time, the EPC meant a lot for the Republic of Moldova, and for us, EPC was this catalyst of different processes, decision-making kind of elements and deliverables for the country, for us. And we are very grateful, and kind of we worked a lot, and that it was possible to have some concrete deliverables on the margins of the EPC. Here I would like to refer to a few. We just a day before managed to launch the EU partnership mission, UPM mission to Moldova with the High Representative Borrell and Minister of Foreign Affairs and Minister of Interior, which is exactly the mission that we asked to help us to build resilience and to fight with all the challenges on the hybrid actions and hybrid threats that have been kind of on us in the last weeks and months. Also, we managed to receive the first equipment within the EPF, European Peace Facility, and also to have the next package of assistance within the EPF approved just before the EPC in itself. We're already benefiting of, like to put all three, 2021, 2022, 2023, of 87 million assistance to help us to build our defense and security. Also, before the EPC managed to approve and to have the package of sanctions for the ones who are destabilizing the Republic of Moldova. And it's also a very important element in bringing and to ensure resilience for our country, but for the entire region. Another very important, and I'm kind of personally kind of considering one of the most with impact for the citizens after visa liberalization, is the roaming. And we managed to sign the roaming agreement one day before the EPC, and it was announced by the President of the European Commission and our President. Also, the President of the European Commission announced an important package of support for the Republic of Moldova to help the economic development and to increase the economic and investment plan from 600 million to 1.6 billion to help us through the solidarity lanes further to tackle and to ensure the independence of our energy kind of sector, and as well to kind of the commitment and all the work within our European path. Building on this, we are expecting to have the Moldova support package approved by the EUCO this month, and it's kind of very important, all the support and all the commitments and all the that were kind of reiterated and expressed on the margins of the EPC. Also, a lot of work and help and deliverables for bilateral cooperation with different countries that have been kind of participating within the EPC. Norway kind of also announced that they will kind of align to the sanctions, kind of very important considerable package of support from the Poland. Like every country bilaterally kind of also looking in our level of cooperation bilaterally to see how we can further engage, strengthen, cooperate, and enhance our dialogue. Just a few words on the EPC in itself and the work. We tried, and we had, I see many kind of faces and some discussions we had before the EPC about the long debate about these two schools of thought, to have it more towards deliverables or more kind of continue the informal and flexible format. And we believe that the Castle Mimi and the neighborhood of the castle really offered that possibility of the informal discussion, which really it's the beauty of this format, which allows the leaders, heads of government and states to engage, to talk, to share, to communicate, and to have different architectures and formats of discussions in order to really tackle the most urgent kind of subjects. And as you, the ones that followed the press communique and also the videos of those meetings, you could see the different interactions in different formats on that day. And we tried through the organization to ensure that both the flexibility, also enough time and formats for the bilaterals, for the leaders to engage, to interact, and to communicate, and also for the ones that would like to sit together and to work towards concrete deliverables to have the possibility to do that. I would like to conclude my intervention, but then I will be open to answer to different particular questions. That for us, it was a very, very important exercise inside the country, which really empowered many dimensions of the country, different teams, like society in general, about the potential that we have, what we can do, and also our European path ahead of us. And this means a lot in terms of society support and will, determination, and also to build trust in the cooperation with different partners and to be seen as a trustful and worthy partner with all the interlocutors that been kind of part of the EPC, and to also have our contribution to the bigger dialogue and to bigger kind of picture. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Morari. Indeed, please take a seat on the panel. France, as has been mentioned before, played a key role, of course, in the inception, but also, I think, in the continuation of the EPC drive. And the person, or the embodiment, if I say, of that drive is Ambassador Hugues Moret, who is with us in a very special role, plenipotentiary ambassadorial role in a way, as special envoy for France in the Ministry of Foreign European Affairs for France. And so we're very keen to hear from you, Ambassador Moret. What do you think that the initial ideas, as have been formulated in various fora about the EPC, are coming to fruition? And how do you think the EPC might develop is, of course, also something that we would like to get your answer to. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Stephen. You have both been very thorough and detailed, and we have a time constraint, so I will myself limit to few brief remarks. But before these remarks, I must say I'm a bit. It's mind-boggling to see how much interest EPC is generating. And when you look at the list, I was looking at the list in one of your screenshots, and you have listed all those contributions from institutes, think tanks, academic researchers, and I must admit, the crop of these essays, research is amazing. It's a new object, it's a new diplomatic object, it's a new process, and already in less than 2 years, you have captured the interest of all the think tanks, brainy academics, and so on. So I'm very impressed by the interest surrounding the EPC. And now we are moving a step forward because we do not have only academic papers, but now we have we have this observatory, which is very original. I must say that I'm very impressed by the work we did. You put in this in 2 weeks, basically. So. And this observatory, I think, is a way to delve in these issues because it raises to me 2 questions. So do we need a tracking device for the EPC? And do we need to be held accountable to this device? And I think it's very important and it's very challenging. And I think we need to come back on this. And having this observatory, I was thinking about, okay, in Granada, we will have CEPS members with lenses, with high-powered lenses, like looking at the summit like if it was a wildlife sanctuary. And it's very funny. And I'm very intrigued by how you are going to manage these things. Anyway. Since I said I will be very short. So maybe to introduce the debate, I will ask 5 quick questions. Was the EPC summit a success? What was the EPC for the host country was a success? Is there any lingering doubts about the added value of the EPC? Does the EPC need to be more institutionalized? And finally, maybe, does the EPC need a more structured agenda, or does it need a lot more tangibles, outcomes, so to speak? So, and my answers to all those 5 questions would be yes, yes, no, no, and yes, no. So, but it's debatable and we will delve into this. So, first question, was it a success? Yes, to me it was a success. As you measure international fora success by 2 things, attendance and press coverage. So regarding the attendance, I think we had 47 heads of delegations. So we had full room. You had no fatigue regarding the process, though they all come, except a few linked to electoral processes. So it was a success in attendance. So it shows that the EPC is flying. It's not grounded, it's flying. And of course it was a press success because I was there in the press center and you had more or less 800 members of the press corps. So it generates a very strong interest in terms of widespread press coverage. So second question, was it a success for the host country? Yes, it was a resounding success. So when in January I started to get involved into this summit, there was some doubts about will Moldova will be able to organize the things? Will it be in terms of security? Will it be safe and so on and so forth? And I must say, after the summit, I no doubt that the Moldovan government would be able to deliver a huge success. And it was, of course, a logistic success, it was an organizational success, but it was a political success. And I think it was very important, and it shows why the EPC is important on a pan-European level. Moldova is located in a very, let's say, moving geopolitical context. It's threatened by destabilization and so on and so forth. And then you have this summit in Chisinau with 47 heads of states and prime ministers coming to Chisinau, coming to Moldova, reaffirming the support for Maia Sandu, its democratic progress, and its European horizons. So I think in itself, having all those delegations flocking to Chisinau was an amazing success, an amazing support by the international community, by the European community as such. So it was a success. And it was a success in terms also, maybe it might appear as a bit anecdotic, but it is not. And what you have mentioned in terms of roaming, decreasing the fees of roaming, it's a deliverable, it's very concrete, it's very tangible, and it would not have happened if the EPC summit had not taken place in Moldova. I'm convinced of this. So EPC is not a huge diplomatic gathering, it's also a gathering which reinforces the country which are participating in this process. Third question, is there any lingering doubts about the EPC added value? My answer to that is a resounding no, of course, because the first, I would not say suspicions, but doubts arising from this new concept was, will it enter in competition with other formats? Will it be a substitute to the enlargement process? Will it not add a layer of symmetry to a European landscape which is already glutted with international format? And will it enter into competition with this body, international bodies like the OSCE or the Council of Europe? So all those, I guess now, after the second summit, all those suspicion, doubts have been cleared out. I think there is no more discussion that EPC is a track B to the enlargement. EPC will compete with NATO. It will be a substitute to the Council of Europe. Or it will enter security themes. No, EPC is not an added layer, but it fills a void. And the void is, it might appear as a bit strange, but when you're looking at the international rendezvous, there is only one format which allows this discussion free, fluid, unfiltered, direct discussion, peer-to-peer, on an equal footing, on an equal basis. There is no other format in the European landscapes which allow this kind of meeting. And I know it might be fuzzy to take your word, but it is not. For the head of states, for the head of government, it is very useful. They do not, you should count on the real opportunity they have to be gathered in the same room without being scripted, without 2, 3, 4 note takers behind the back, and to be their own, to have ownership of the agenda. And I think it's very important in terms of diplomatic political interaction. So, and we should absolutely keep this format, the spirit of this format, the spirit of fire chat format. I think we are lacking this. And you should remember that the European Council and the G5 at the very beginning, it was a French idea. It was Giscard who in 1974-75 launched this idea. The idea was to gather in the same room those principles and to let them talk freely about the most pressing issues. European Council was how are we going to move the European agenda in a more structured manner. G5 was how are we going to address the economic macro challenges. That was the idea. And I think behind these EPC ideas, you have the same motto, the same ambition to trash among, without a total liberty, without any witnesses, this kind of pressing issues. So EPC is born out of war, of course. The necessity of EPC was to have this general pan-European conversation after the Russian aggressions against Ukraine. So it has its value, and it showed again in Chisinau the solidarity of this 47 delegation with Ukraine. I think it's very important to bear this in mind. Fourth question, does EPC needs to be more institutionalized? The quick answer is, for me, no. I know it's a bit difficult to imagine this kind of format, totally unstructured, totally informal, without basically no preparations. But I think that's the, if we do not want to enter this international circus which some institutions have become, you don't need to press institutional. You don't need it, in fact. It's a kind of organic process. It develops by itself. And it was very impressive to see how the head of delegation were interacting between themselves in Chisinau. And the preparation, of course, you need some, not roadmaps, you need some indications. So, but I was witness to the preparation of the upcoming EPC summit in Chisinau, and you had no more than maybe 3 or 4 discussion before the summit. So it was very light. Okay, we all knew that we had to discuss these pressing issues, which was security, energy, connectivity. But beyond that, the discussion was led by the principal themselves. So the institution, I think there is a common agreement between the 57 head of states and government not to press for more formality and institutional everything. Last question, does the EPC need a more structured agenda, or does it need to deliver tangible? So my answer was yes and no. I think that's why the Chisinau summit was so important, because in reality, it was the first summit. It was a confirmatory summit. And out of this discussion among the head of states and governments cropped up a few items which might develop into more concrete agendas. So I'm thinking of, because France is very interested in this agenda, is cybersecurity. We have seen that connectivity is playing a role. So how do you, and it's very concrete. If you want to have human mobility, you need to tackle this. You need to tackle this in 2 ways, by decreasing fees of roaming, for example. It's very concrete. If you want to move people, they need to talk, and they need to have affordable means of talking on a pan-European context. And you have also this issue of how are we going to harmonize the railways, for example, because the écartement, I don't know the English word for the gauge, is different from Ukraine, Finland, Latvia, and let's say France, Germany. So we need to address this issue very concretely, and it will be a concrete deliverable. But what I'm saying is that we don't need roadmap. We need to follow up on the initiative that were talked on, but in a very pragmatic matter. It should not be constrained. It should not be done at 50 of 57 plus the EU institutions, it should be based and move forward on an ad hoc basis. I think that's the way it's going to work. So having said this, I don't want to be longer because we need to have a QA session, but I think that's the way forward. So, and coming back to the circle with this observatory, I think you will have a difficult task because you need to track the invisible, you need to track the undefined. So the accountability of this process, I'm not sure it can be quantified. It will assess, and it has its value because I think in terms of visual concept, you need to have this kind of instrument. But you will not have accountability as such. You will be able to follow up on certain tracks, but not to have this accountability instrument in a mathematician sense. That's all I wanted to say as introductory remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Moret. Please join the panel. Okay, I'm conscious of time, and I know there's a lot of firepower in the room as well, so we want to have a discussion with you as audience. I still wanted in perhaps more rapid-fire exchanges, get the impressions of a few independent minds, but then also, of course, of the upcoming, after Spain, that is presidency of the EPC UK representative. But first, Julian Gross, I already introduced you, of course, as director of EPRE. You've been in government before. You have been supporting Moldova's modernization effort in various constellations, including EU, now also EPC, of course. What to you is the value added when you look at the EPC, objectively speaking?
Thank you very much, Stephen, and once again, congrats for the effort to present this very unique tool to help us to better understand what actually EPC Summit is and what can be this gathering of European leaders. Well, the added value, I think much has been said already. Ambassador has tried to hint to that, but
feel free to disagree.
Where I will agree actually that there are a lot of organizations on this continent that actually have their own goals and objectives. You know, when you look at security, when you look at human rights, rule of law, EU, and apparently the leaders have a lot of venues where they can discuss various topics and issues, but sometimes it's very difficult to agree on common agenda, on common solutions, and as it is basically, as I look at the EPC, is actually as a result of that. There was a need for a gathering where the leaders would just had a chance to fill in, you know, the gap of just talking real stuff in a way that they are not committed to talk about that in public and to commit to it, because they have, you know, people behind it. They have a lot of internal agendas and topics and issues that they not always can commit and talk about that at the European level, because that may be a cost for them internally. And I think the summit, the gathering of these leaders provides that opportunity in a more informal setting to exchange ideas and maybe to pre-cook some of the decisions that later on to be brought on I don't know, the agenda of the EU or others. So I think that is one of the opportunities and values that this gathering is providing. This is a lively organism. We understand that the EPC format, when was launched by President Macron, it was driven by two factors. the war. It was really a response of the war and an effort to consolidate, the countries on this continent in support of Ukraine and against basically the aggressive actions of Russia. Know that there are no other formats, so like Rammstein or international coalitions and so on and so forth. But I think it was really important to provide that opportunity for the leaders. And the second factor was the discussion about enlargement. The fatigue of the enlargement, the discussions before, the June, the decision about, granting the candidate status country to new countries, newcomers like Ukraine, Moldova, and potentially Georgia. So in a way, we understand that it was basically a very delicate French-style movement of the chair of the European Council to strike some compromises, or at least a terrain where some compromises can be given for the benefit of the world. And as we have seen, the idea of the EPC format is again taking shape. And I think when I look back to Bulbaka, to Moldova summit, I have seen how it evolved. And I think it's right to say that this was the first summit where there was a more structured agenda, more concrete effort was put to really to bring something concrete, like connectivity projects. But also we have to agree that the EPC future is very much dependent on the ability of the leaders to fill in with, flesh on these bonds. I mean, and I understand at the same time that the EU still has a very important role, a key role in shaping, the deliverables of whatever discussions are taking place at the EPC, in the EPC format. And I here talk about the really concrete projects and connectivity and cybersecurity, all the challenges that we face today in Europe. EU is the main actually actor that can help to implement these decisions. And at the same time, I understand, and I think even though there is still a lot of discussion about an attempt to use the EPC to replace the enlargement and so on and so forth, but we all agree that you cannot use the EPC really as a replacement for one of the best EU policies, which is the enlargement. That is something which has to be dealt separately, and I think I will not stop here to discuss that. But I think what the EPC helped Moldova is really to use that opportunity and to make us known to many countries in Europe, in particular in the European Union. I mean, the summit in Moldova provided opportunity for many leaders who have not been ever to Moldova to visit us and actually to see us as a country, a tiny country, a very vulnerable country, a lot of challenges we face. I mean, the most affected country after Ukraine due to Russian aggression, a country that is targeted by destabilization by Russia, with limited resources. I mean, there is a lot of skepticism. I remember last year when it was announced that Moldova will host the summit. For many of the people, it was, where is Moldova? That question was there. But as I have seen the work that has been done and actually the support that we received as a country from other countries like France, Romania, many countries have been helping us. Actually, it was proved that, well, even a tiny country like Moldova can act geopolitically, and I think that is another important takeaway from this summit. It actually provided Moldova a good opportunity to promote our foreign policy objectives, to promote us as a country, and I think this is another added value opportunity for many participating countries in the EPC that can be explored and used. And I think with that, may contribute even more to the objectives that individual countries have to achieve them. And at the same time, I think in time, in Grenada, I'm sure we will see kind of a step forward. If in Chisinau we discuss projects, I hope in Grenada we will discuss how those projects can be implemented. But most importantly, I think what should remain in our minds when we look at these discussions at very high level is that everything which is discussed there, agreed there, should help actually and should benefit the people, because that should be number one. Thank you.
Good point. Final there, Julian. I couldn't help but think that okay, the first summit was held at Prague Castle, the second one at Chateau Mimi. Whether indeed the Alhambra will provide the venue in Granada for the third summit. But I wanted to turn to Sébastien Maillard, who's a director at l'Institut Jacques Delors in Paris, and who's been on the forefront of analysis, certainly also before the first summit took place. I have difficulties understanding, why label a supposedly informal platform a community, to then claim that this is a very informal nature and that we shouldn't, think that we will have a difficult time, at least, tracking policy implementation and holding our dear leaders accountable. I take those points. But at the same time, is increasingly producing deliverables, also quite used, that have to be implemented through EU budgets, instruments, etc. And so my main question to you, Sébastien, is the relationship here between the EPC and the European Union. Now, I will ask the same question, of course, to our UK representative here on the panel. But I wonder if you could reflect on this.
Well, firstly, thank you for your invitation and for this gathering. I think it's important we keep reflecting on what the EPC means, because it's still a sort of identified flying object, but it is flying, and it's we need to reflect on that. And congratulations for this new EPC Observatory, because although the EPC doesn't have any institution or any secretariat, it has an observatory, and I think it would be very useful to use this tool. It's true that, as it was recalled, when the EPC was announced, it was announced in a very EU framework. It was at the European Parliament in Strasbourg on the 9th of May, with a very Schumanian name, European Political Community. And I actually still find incredible that the UK actually finally accepted the name when you see how communitarian it sounds. But I think there's really a gap between the official name and the as Hugues Morez said, the Giscardian approach to it. It really is all about how the European Council first was created, or the G7 was created. It was under Giscard's brain, and this fire chat approach to having a place where you can build trust among leaders, in a place where there actually is no other venue for this. And the fact that this idea popped up during the war, it really showed that there was a need, since there was this war, to have such this new format. So I believe the EPC is really completely different and out of the EU. It was perhaps at the very beginning more EU-centered than it really now is, because it has 47 heads of state of government and many members that are not in the EU. It will probably rely on some of the EU institutions or funding to get some to get some deliverables. But I think the purpose of the EPC is not just on deliverables, if I may insist on that. I really see three missions. The first one is to have a pan-European strategic discussion of the continent, and of the continent from a geographical basis. I don't want to get into any geographical dispute or where the border ends, but I mean, we're going from Iceland to Azerbaijan, so we really have the whole continent is there, and this has a geopolitical meaning. I mean, when in a world that sometimes some other countries want to be polarized between the West and the rest, between China and US rivalry, the fact that European leaders are gathering themselves as such, it means a lot. So there's this pan-European dimension to it beyond the EU, because Europe is not just the EU. And secondly, it's a diplomatic hub with all the bilateral that can go on, and we've seen it in Prague, we've seen it in Chisinau, and it will always be the perfect opportunity for this kind of meetings to happen coincidentally with, and it means a lot for those bilateral meetings to happen there rather than in one of the countries or even in a set up place. So it can happen, it can really be diplomatically useful. And it can, the third mission is giving a political impetus to some ongoing pan-European initiatives, such as on cybersecurity or on connectivity, but it will always give the political boost it needs, but it cannot really go much further. Then it will rely not only on EU, but also on the European Reconstruction and Development Bank, there are other tools. It's true that the fact that Mrs. van der Leyen, Mr. Charles Michel, Mr. Borrell are there is obvious, but they also be in the G20 or G7. I mean, it makes sense, especially when due to the topics we are talking about, they are there. But if the EPC, I think the future of the EPC relies on the fact that it will stand away from the EU to be able to show what its usefulness is. And I'll end on the fact that the UK is participating is really key to show that it's another approach to having a discussion on strategic interest outside the EU. And my question actually for the upcoming summits is, will we be able to keep everyone on board? And I still wonder why President Erdogan didn't show up in Chisinau. I know there are many good reasons for not coming, but still it's important he comes to Granada. Otherwise, the very purpose of the EPC, of what it means, if Turkey was not participating anymore, yes, the very purpose of the whole initiative would be more questionable. So I wouldn't underestimate the fact he did not come, and hopefully it will just be an exception.
Yeah, something to observe in the upcoming months. Yeah, here too, I wondered. I mean, it was mentioned that the EPC, certainly in the Moldovan context, supports the country. Clear. I wonder if it's a burden on the Spanish. They have elections coming up. They have a very heavy EU Council presidency with more than 300 legislative files they want to close, and then they have to organize also, on the back of an informal European Council summit, an EPC summit. Okay, I only wish if there is a Spanish representative, please identify yourself. We'd like to get an answer to that. But jumping over the Spanish presidency, it will turn back to a non-EU country, Britain. Here too, I would like to ask a question. How will hosting the EPC actually help Britain, which will go through elections next year as well? And more fundamentally, perhaps, on the nature of the EPC, the genesis of it as a reaction to Russia's and Belarusian, with Belarusian support, aggression against Ukraine and the whole malfunctioning European security order. I would like to ask whether you see not just the value of the EPC at plugging a hole in that order at this moment in time, but whether it could also provide a basis for a future rejigged European security order. Nick Leek is joining us to give clarity on those questions, perhaps also others. from the UK mission to the EU. So Nick, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. Interesting to hear you talk about the term community, because thinking back to before the Prague event, we definitely did pause on the term community. But in the end, we decided that, as Shakespeare says, a rose by any name would smell as sweet, and therefore the name is perhaps less important than the content. Is it not working? Okay, is that better? Yeah. So just, I mean, to be brief, because I'm really interested in what you think, but sort of going back to the genesis of this, and the idea came. So UK-EU relations were not in a wonderful place at the time. And I think one of the things that the EPC did really well is it managed to make countries like mine feel welcome and feel wanted in that contribution. And I know that we had a new prime minister, and I know she never ceased to be a new prime minister, but never mind, she was a new prime minister then, and it made her feel comfortable. So, you know, credit to those that were involved, those that came up with the idea, and also the Czech presidency who organised that Prague event. Both are my prime ministers who have been. I think the EPC, you talked about a diplomatic hub. I think it's an extremely efficient way of meeting lots of European leaders together. It's a sort of European UNGA. That it saves time, it saves money, and it saves carbon. So kind of what's not to like about that. But I suppose we also recognise that for European Union leaders, they do meet each other more frequently, and therefore there needs to be an added value beyond that. I think, don't underestimate the power. Somebody said it's a photo opportunity to send to the Kremlin. Don't underestimate the power of that. That's not a bad thing, that all of us turn up and show our support for Ukraine. So I think that is worthwhile, and it is important to do that. And I think that, you know, alongside the bilateral, multilateral discussions, there have been some nice outcomes, some discussions on some of the peace processes that are going on in our continent. We rejoined the North Sea Energies Cooperation, which was an important thing for us to achieve. And I think one of the nice things about the EPC format is the expectations are kind of low. You know, people expect it to be a talking shop and a discussion, and therefore it surprises on the high side. And it's sort of good to under-promise and over-deliver, and we quite like that, I think. I mean, looking to the future, others have spoken about the need for a balance between protecting and preserving that informality that the leaders really like, but also focusing on where outcomes and stories are possible. I mean, from our perspective, we talk a bit about themes that run through the summit in Chisinau, then the summit in Granada, and then the summit in London, and potentially beyond. We talk about energy policy as being particularly important on our continent at this time. We talk about security in its wider dimension, which includes hybrid threats and cybersecurity. And we talk about organized immigration crime, which is a kind of European level. Others contribute to that, and we've heard today some talk about connectivity, which I think is a sort of broader way of looking at energy, because energy is a form of connectivity, but then so is phone, so is telecom, so is rail networks, and so we will reflect on that as we build those themes up. But kind of having a story that runs through a number of summits is sort of the aim. I don't, at the risk of getting this wrong, I don't think the UK elections will have a impact on the UK hosting. The UK is hosting in the first half of next year, and the UK elections can happen anytime until January 25. So I'm sure that we will select a date that doesn't interfere. We're a little more worried about the EU elections, and we certainly don't want our summit to be dominated by people fighting about who should be the next president of the Commission. But again, you've picked your date, so we can pick our date and make sure that doesn't happen. Congratulations on the observatory. I think it's really helpful. I went through the website this morning, and it will certainly make our lives a hell of a lot easier to have all that material in one place. I suppose my one request to the observatory is kind of give us the benefit of the doubt a bit, because sometimes it won't all be visible, as colleagues here have said, and sometimes, you know, it is a bit intangible, but we're there trying to do the right thing and give the EPC a chance to kind of flower and flourish, because I think it can do that and can become a really valuable part of the apparatus that we have on this continent. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. Okay, without further ado, I would like to turn the floor to you, kind members of the audience. Please identify yourself and pose a short and snappy question. And if you can address it to one of the panelists, then all the better. I think you were first.
For expanding the format beyond prime ministers to say foreign ministers, or even to appoint Sherpas to follow up. Is there a chance that would happen, do you think? And what would be the implications of that? Thank you.
To address to...
Well, actually, I will let you pick, Stephen, whoever you think.
I will turn that first to Ambassador Moret then. Next to you. Yeah. Anyone else, please catch my eye.
Hi, my name is Brett Haig from BBVA, a Spanish bank. And I've got a question concerning a topic you mentioned before, shortly, which is Turkey. How should the EPC address Turkey to make it more interesting for Turkey in order that he participates, that he feels the value, well, the president, Turkish president. In order to make it more inclusive for Turkey. Thanks.
That would be primarily to Sébastien Maillard, I suppose. And yes, gentlemen here.
Sorry, the triangle of questions
ladies,
there.
please.
Of course. Philippe Lefebvre from the European Business Summit. Maybe looking at the organizations who thought the EPC would be a threat, like the Council of Europe, the OSCE, do you think they've been given a sufficient sort of kick to make themselves seem more useful in the context that they could not be able to reach agreements the EPC seemingly has managed to bring together? That might be another question for Sebastian, but if anyone else in the panel also wants to answer it, then please. Thank you.
Yes, I see Julian also nodding about this in particular. But others too should feel free to come in on that. Scanning the room, come on, don't be shy. Ask the fifth question then. Yes.
This is probably, sorry, Max Tomlinson, AmCham EU. This is a question probably for Nick with regards to whether the EPC sufficiently fills the void of dialogue following Brexit, or do you think there are further efforts that are needed on that level?
Okay. This side still? No? Yes.
Thank you. My name is Margit Wunsch-Garman from the German think tank SWP. I have a very technical question, perhaps for the Ambassador of Moldova. Before the summit in Chisinau, we kind of heard the working streams that are being chaired by two countries. Is there any change? Because obviously it made sense that Spain would chair one working stream with the upcoming presidency, Moldova would do the other one as well. Is there kind of some sort of rotation system? Has there been any movement at the summit? So we know who's chairing what for the upcoming summit in Spain.
Thank you very much. Quick scan still. No, we turn it back to the panel. Can we maybe move in a reverse order with Nick? You also had a question directly addressed to you.
I did, yeah. So, I mean, does the EPC sufficiently fill the void post-Brexit? I mean, I just don't think we see it in that context, really. I mean, we have a series of dialogues with the EU, which are being set up, and a kind of very complicated structure of governance around our agreements with the European Union, which we need to get going, and we need to make work, and we need to show that that governance system will allow our relationship to adapt to challenges as they arise and respond to those things. And we work on that with the European the European Union, and that's how our relationship will function in the future. The EPC just isn't the same thing. It's a different structure that runs across the whole continent, that allows us to talk to talk about things when they affect all of us, but also to have opportunities for bilateral and minilateral meetings with important other leaders, whether they're in the European Union or not. So I think it doesn't attempt to fill that void in dialogue. There's plenty of other ways that dialogue can happen, but what it does do is it gives us as a continent an opportunity to discuss and agree on matters that are absolutely crucial around things like security and how we work together. And yeah, it grew up as a response to Russia's aggression in Ukraine, and that's probably worth remembering, that it kind of didn't exist before that aggression took place. And would it have made a difference if it did? And it might have done.
Nick, perhaps as a follow-up question from my side, I mean, it's a community, yet we don't have common statements, final communique signed or at least agreed to by all. Why not on even a simple declaration in support of Ukraine? Is that impossible to achieve at 47? And if so, where does the problem lie?
I think the photo opportunity and the fact that everybody turns up to the EPC sends a much more powerful message than a sort of drafted paragraph. I mean, it's not for us as UK to say whether that's the kind of thing that EPC should do. It's for each presidency, but it isn't what it's designed to do, and it isn't the role it plays. So I think we've all been really strong in our support to Ukraine. And in terms of, I talked about dialogue between the UK and the EU. I mean, candidly, as an ex-member state, the EU has gone further, faster, and with greater resolve on its support to Ukraine than I think we would have imagined that it would. And it's made us reassess the EU's role as a security actor and an important security partner. And that's great, and we'll use those dialogues and that methodology that we have to go in that direction. But again, that isn't really what the EPC is for.
Yeah. Sebastian, the question on Turkey and its fluid alliances, maybe that, part of an answer to my previous question might lie in an analysis on its role, and indeed, the wider Caucasus region in which it also tends to operate, relations with Russia, obviously. But on the specific question on Turkey.
Yes, thank you for the question, and I will actually answer it together with the following question on how does the EPC fit along with the Council of Europe or OSCE and other old established institutions on this continent. I think it's the fact that the Council of Europe actually met at leaders level in Reykjavik just some weeks before really showed that the Council of Europe wanted to prove that it was it could achieve the same kind of high level meeting, and it was there. But it plays a different role. It could have been, yes, confusing, and there was confusion at the very beginning when President Macron launched the idea in the 9th of May. In the speech, one could wonder how the Council of Europe would fit in, because it was much about democratic values. I think today, the way I see it is, and to say it bluntly, the Council of Europe is a community of values, of praising liberal democracy, and EPC is a community of interests. It's a community of interest bound by our geography, basically. So that's the difference, and that's why I think Turkey can feel at ease, perhaps more at ease in the EPC. We know it's a difficult member in NATO. It's a difficult member in the Council of Europe. and its candidacy to the EU is stalled and perhaps vanishing, or I don't know what future there is to it. But so at the end of the day, I think Turkey will find interesting to participate in EPC summits, or otherwise it may want to isolate itself. But I mean, I really would not. I would be surprised if it really did not come back to the coming to the following summits. And just a quick answer, but I would be happy to hear Hugues on this, on the other formats beyond the leaders. We insisted that the fact that EPC is about building trust among leaders and only them, and the fact that they can meet really directly, which is part of the added value of this. Maybe in the future, if the EPC lasts beyond the war in Ukraine, and maybe it will not feel necessary to meet twice a year, because that's a pace perhaps difficult in the long run to keep up to. But you may that's just an idea, but you may find interesting if you have a leaders meeting once a year, that halfway the Sherpas meet or the Minister of Foreign Affairs meet to prepare the following leaders summit, or to take the benefit of the follow-up of the previous one. So that may be the kind of solution. But I don't know. I don't know if these things must come naturally. We don't have to overthink them too much.
Yeah, it's interesting to see in the G7 format, which is, of course, set up as an equally informal platform at leaders level. You have subsequent layers of coordination happening, even to the technical level on sanctions, for example, against Russia, or now in the setup of an international tribunal on the crime of aggression. So there are in this format. If this format is anything to go by, and the references were made, then one should not exclude, of course, a kind of loosely structured layer cake, maybe not heavily institutionalized, but coordination mechanisms maturing. You wanted to come in on a security order issue as well, I think. Maybe it was a different question that you wanted to respond to.
I just wanted to add on this kind of coexistence of the format of the EPC with the other organizations. Well, first of all, EPC was not created to replace other organizations. At the same time, we understand that if other organizations were delivering to their mandate, maybe nobody would need to push leaders into a room to provide the comfort to meet twice a year in that number of countries together. Because EU leaders, they do that very often, at summits twice a year. I think it's a good opportunity. In that sense, I think it's a good opportunity that leaders of 27 countries meet together as often as they want, as often as they need. I think it creates opportunities for as I mentioned, to pre-cook important decisions that then later can be streamed through the processes, but in the other organizations. And we know that, OSCE is going through difficult times now with Russia and Belarus there. Again, EPC provides a good format in it to strategize how to approach, how to discuss. Maybe it's not the right format, again, to discuss at that level all the decisions on the security architecture, but at least it provides a chance for them to speak. And well, otherwise, I think nobody has an expectation at this stage to look into the EPC as an organization. We have a lot of them, and I also don't believe that anyone has any appetite to have other kind of formats of meetings or at that level. I mean, ministerial, working group level, and so on and so forth. Nobody wants that, because that's, again, bureaucracy, which we have a lot, both in the EU, in other organizations. And this once again confirms that the appearance of this kind of format was just based on the needs. It's basically based on the needs for the leaders to talk and chat, and then an opportunity for other countries which don't have an occasion, to talk to about their agendas, to be there, and equally to address all those topics and push their own agendas. And at the same time, again, EPC, it's a perfect format today for Turkey to be active. I don't see reasons why Turkey wouldn't be interested to be there. This is why I don't believe that, the fact that the Turkish president did not attend Moldova event would probably has some kind of background decisions which Russians wanted to to use that. I mean, you saw like reactions of Kremlin about the fact that, well, they made it seem that the visit of the president to Moldova was cancelled after a talk of Erdogan with President Putin. So no, I think Turkey is very much interested to be there, and it provides a good opportunity for them to be there.
Thanks, Julian. Ambassador Morar, you had a direct question from Margit Wunschta. Technical issue.
Yes, about the chairing. I wanted a bit to put it together with the first question about the leaders only and the guests. I don't know if you noticed, but we open up a bit in terms of like the invitees. It was plus the leaders that were invited to Prague. We invited the 3 leaders of the microstates, plus all the leadership of the EU, like 3 presidents and HRVP. About leaders only, I think it's still relevant to continue and to strengthen this type of cooperation, and then for different presidencies at different stage, the leaders will decide to open up or to have, I don't know, it's still ongoing discussion. We've been approached in so many ways by EBRD, EAB, and different other actors that also are kind of behind to help to implement some of the ideas of the leaders. But it's again for the leaders to decide, and maybe at a later stage when this kind of discussion will be kind of in different form. But I very much resonate and agree that for the time being, it's like leaders to have this informality and platform for discussion. About chairing, it was a process in itself when the countries that express their will to chair, to take initiatives, and to have this freedom inside. We had building from Prague on the 2 kind of topics, energy and security. We kind of build 3 working or topics streams. It was energy, security, and connectivity. And because connectivity has kind of also been discussed in the panel, it's so linked with the energy, it was kind of put together, and we had 4 roundtables based on 2 topics, security and energy and connectivity. And it was the only principle to have 1 country from EU and 1 country outside EU, like from the EPC, to co-chair. And this was the only principle, but the rest was about the will and kind of the ones who expressed the interest too. And we had UK and Poland co-chairing 1 roundtable of security, and Ukraine and PEC. And on energy and connectivity, we had Moldova and Spain, and Belgium and Norway. They were the co-chairs from our side. Also, President, when we were in Prague, also had the possibility to co-chair 1. And it was a very also important exercise and experience for us as a future kind of host to be part of this discussion. And also one of the co-chairs within their own division, kind of agreeing between themselves, would do a kind of a little report or update for the plenary discussion, like after the round tables. This kind of been the logic of the work. I think it's kind of already proven the functionality of this logic, but I think a lot with the future hosts will adapt or adjust depending on the subject, how many topics, how. And all the work also was done by Sherpas at the levels, by kind of Sherpas, some kind of coordination, meetings and discussions, and it went pretty well. Thank you.
Thank you. Finally, Ambassador Moret, how do
Yeah,
you see EPC developing?
Yeah, a quick answer on, do we need to add a ministerial layer in this process? No. It's a blunt answer, but no. But again, you need to understand that it's a leader-driven process. It's not a bureaucratic process. It's done on a personal basis, and they are enjoying themselves. They enjoy being among themselves, and they enjoy being alone in the room. So they don't need anyone else. It's you need to understand that. If you want interaction between the leaders, don't add so many participants. It's very important to keep that spirit. Of course, as Daniela said, if in the future they want to change the format, let them do that. But currently, it has no purpose to add any outside actors. And as Daniela said also, it would have made no sense inviting the Bank of Development in the process. But what would have been their role? It's a leader-only thing. So if we need the help for implementing policies coming out of the summit, let's see. But for the moment, again, it's one alone leader plus eventually one note taker. So let's keep the format. On Turkey, I think it should not be seen as a problem. I think you have to bear in mind that there was a conflicting electoral agenda. The last round of the election was on the 28th. The summit was on the 1st. So do not misinterpret the no participation of President Erdogan, and you had the foreign minister in the summit. So I have no doubt that next summit in Granada, you will have President Erdogan. On Brexit, my English colleague answered that, but it's very important. It's a wider Europe. So, and when you are talking about security challenges facing the wider continent, no one imagined that we could not have UK participating in this process. So, again, it's not a substitute to Brexit. It's a larger conversation, and UK is part of this larger conversation, as Turkey is. Regarding the technicalities of the preparation of the agenda, I think, as Daniela said, it's up to the next presidency to how it's going to organize itself. So again, I know it's a bit confusing to not be being able to relate to habits of constructing an agenda, issuing a communique, drafting conclusions, but that's not the process. Of course, you need the help of the bureaucracy at some point, and that's my job too. I was named as kind of coordinator between all our administrations, but it's up to every country and presidency to organize itself so as to deliver the summit. So I'm not worried by the fact that you do not have a network of Sherpa working 24 hours a day on this. No, it's informal too on this, and it works.
Thank you very much. I will not attempt to try and summarize or offer conclusions of this meeting. We have run over time, and I apologize for the poor timekeeping. There is an opportunity, however, to continue the discussion with our speakers, amongst yourselves, over lunch, which will be served in our so-called green room, a few steps down when you exit this room. I just wanted to highlight again that we are now live from Brussels, with the EPC-Observatory.info website. Do consult it. Do give us your feedback. As said, it was developed in a very short time frame, and we will continue to maintain it, to improve it as we go forward with your help. So thank you for your participation, for your interest, and we hope to see you back at CEPS at some point. Thank you to the speakers.